All right, let's talk about a really strange one. Picture this. It's 1989, and a guy named Alec Newald is just doing a routine drive in New Zealand. Should have taken him, 3 hours? But when he finally gets to where he's going, he finds out that 10 entire days have just vanished. So let's get right into this bizarre and pretty compelling case of missing time. So you gotta ask, right? How on earth does a 3 hour drive just morph into a 10-day ordeal? The whole core of this story is what you'd call a temporal anomaly. It's basically a glitch in time, where a simple car ride seems to have punched a hole straight through the calendar. Seriously, just try to wrap your head around this for a second. You leave your house on a Monday morning, you figure you'll be there by the afternoon, but when you pull up, you find out it's not Monday. It's not even Tuesday. It's Thursday of the next week. I mean, that's the incredible claim right at the heart of the Alec Newald case. So here's the timeline, and it just shows you how impossible this jump really was. He takes off on a Monday in the middle of February, expecting Tuesday to be the next day. But nope. The next day he's actually aware of is the Thursday a full 10 days later. As he described it, Tuesday it never happened for him. A whole week just poof, gone. And here's the thing. The only shred of physical evidence he had was this. After this whole time jump, both the clock in his car and his own wristwatch were totally dead. And they were both frozen at the exact same time, 10:30. It's like this single silent snapshot of the moment when his timeline just froze. Okay, so this is the big question, isn't it? Where did those 10 days go? Well, according to Alec Newald, the answer isn't anywhere on Earth. He claims he was taken, but not for some scary experiment. He says it was for an orientation. So instead of, panic and chaos, he's met with this super formal, almost corporate greeting. It wasn't an abduction in the way we usually think of it. He said it felt much more like a structured briefing. And that's really what makes his story so different. It wasn't a nightmare, it was an organized program. Now, to get around the whole how do you talk to an alien problem, he was given this special suit. He described it as some kind of tech that allowed for telepathic translation so they could understand each other perfectly, no effort at all. He was even assigned a guide who he was told had actually volunteered for the job. So then they show him their world, the city he calls Napalasa. And his descriptions, they're not vague, they're incredibly specific, and he never wavers from them. He talks about this huge city on a coast full of small circular houses and these pyramid-like buildings. He described towers with these strange spiral tops and glowing orbs that looked like mesh light bulbs. And all of it was next to an ocean that he said looked black and was as smooth as glass. This consistent, coherent geometry is a really key part of his story. But of course, there was a catch. His whole visit to this incredible alien world, it came with this really unsettling condition, a rule that kind of sits at the very center of all the controversy around this case. He was told, pretty bluntly, a warning that was like a clause in an unwritten contract. If he chose to go back to Earth, the knowledge he'd gained might have to be removed. And this wasn't really presented as a threat, more like a procedural consequence of him leaving. And right there, that's the central problem with this whole case, isn't it? On one hand, this memory clause is a really compelling part of the story. It neatly explains why he didn't come back with pockets full of alien tech or a perfect photographic memory. But on the other hand, if you're a skeptic, it sounds incredibly convenient, right? It's a perfect way to make a story impossible to disprove. So you'd think coming back to Earth would be a relief, right? Well, for Newald, it was anything but. Instead, he claims he was met with this systematic campaign that was pretty much designed to shut him up. Right away, as soon as he's back, a whole bunch of really weird stuff starts happening. He had trouble with his physical coordination and had these awful, persistent headaches. He also said he started having these intrusive dreams that began to fill in the gaps of his 10-day experience. And then things got more tangible. Some weird crystal-like things he found in his car just disappeared, and so did sketches and notes he'd made. And this is where the story shifts into what he calls soft suppression. It all started when some strangers sold him a bunch of stolen cars, which of course led to criminal charges. Then he says he was pressured by the authorities, who basically offered to make the whole thing go away if he cooperated. He took that to mean one thing: keep your mouth shut. And that kicked off this brutal 2-year legal fight that completely bankrupted him. And you know what? All that pressure, it worked, at least legally. He ended up with a 12-month prison sentence. He said it was only after he served half of that time that he decided, you know what, he had to write his story down. He believed people had a right to know what he claims happened to him. Okay, so what do we do with a story like this? It's just so incredible. On one side, you have this extraordinary claim, and on the other, you have a total lack of hard evidence. So let's try to break down the main arguments here. So let's look at this. You've got the time anomaly. What makes it compelling is that it's a specific calendar-based claim. It's not just a vague feeling. But the skeptic's view is there are no independent records, no timestamps, nothing to back it up. Then there's the alien city. Super detailed, very coherent. But that's also the sign of really good fictional world building. And finally, the whole suppression story. It feels chillingly plausible. But again, the motives he's talking about, that's his own interpretation of events. You know, what's really fascinating is that Newwild's story isn't some complete one-off. It actually fits into a pattern that some researchers call a curriculum abduction. These aren't horror stories about probes and experiments. They're more like orientation sessions. They're packed with details about social rules, how things are governed, and they almost always have that built-in reason for why there's no proof. And that's really where this leaves us. If you throw out the alien story, you're left with a totally different puzzle. Why do so many of these really detailed contact stories from different people from different decades all seem to follow the same script? Missing time, a formal orientation, a clear message, and then some kind of pressure campaign to keep them quiet. What does that pattern itself tell us? That's the question this case really leaves you with.